welcome to the Power Platform Show. Before we chat with today's guest, here's a quick message from our sponsors. Is career coaching something you need to look at in your career? At this time, maybe you're faced with decisions about what's the best path forward, where to go, where to spend your time. I've had 18 years experience, well, a little over, coaching people into fulfilling careers in the space. So if that sounds like something that interests you, please go to nz365guy.com/coaching and let's set up a chat. With that, let's get on with the show. Today's guest is from Edinburgh, Scotland. He is the Dynamic CRM Technical Lead at Hymans Robinson. He likes going for walks, exercises occasionally, and takes photos on occasions as well. His main interest is football, Formula One, and NFL. NFL, interesting. You can find him on Twitter at Ryan Maclean 365 and learn more about CRM 365 actually at his blog, ryanmaclean365.com. Love the personal branding there. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Thanks, Mark. I thought you'd like the personal branding. I got tips from you as one of your day mentorship programs. So
good, mate. So good.
Good.
I like it. Now, we've had you on the show most recently, and I really, post that conversation that we had, which was, of course, on the MVP show, we talked about doing an episode where we discussed things or a point of view from, as in your point of view, as in from a customer, end customer of Microsoft's using Dynamics CRM, Dynamics 365, and what is the journey like? Because a lot of the folks I get on the show are either Microsoft staff or consultants from Microsoft partners. But you, in your situation, you actually work at a company that uses this as a tool. And I really want to get your view on the world and what your experience has been over the last period of time that you've been in this role.
Yeah, sure. So I guess my journey is slightly different than probably a lot of my peers in the network. And it's, I guess, happenstance and circumstance more than anything. It's not like I ever really planned for this to be the way. I much like I guess a lot of people, I fell into working with the Power Platform, or CRM as it was when I first started using it. So I think to go right back and not to dwell too much on the past, but I did law at university, and then I did a master's in IT law. And so from that, I then got a job within the university working within their intellectual property team, and also as part of that worked quite closely with the commercial team. And I've just always been a bit of a geek and a bit of a process nerd, and I guess when I was working there, I'd seen the system they were using. So at that time, it wasn't Dynamics; it was another CRM system. It was a research kind of management system they were using as a CRM system, and it just didn't work. It just caused so many painful points, just in terms of how the workflow was, and when you ask people about it, it's the same old phrase. It's my most hated phrase at work is like, why do you do this? And it's like, well, that's just how we've always done it. And it drives me up the wall. And so I'd kind of got a bit hands-on with that, and I'd worked with the team that were responsible for that piece of software, just to kind of optimize it for us. And then after that, my boss left and then recruited me to go to the company he went to, which was in oil and gas, because I was living in Aberdeen in Scotland at the time. And so then I went to this oil and gas firm, and they had Dynamics CRM, but they were really using it, I guess, what I would call as an expensive Rolodex. They were just using it to manage their contacts, and they didn't really understand anything about what it could do in terms of managing your opportunity in your sales pipeline, or managing projects, or any of the extensibility of the platform. And so, like I said, I'm a massive geek. And so I just was like, well, if nobody else is doing it, and we don't have any kind of partner responsible for it, and nobody's really got any kind of qualms about what we're doing, can I take it on? And they were like, this sounds great. So I took it on as part of my wider role, and I was like, well, I'm just going to start thinking about how we do this. And so part of my background is I also trained as an ISO 9001 lead auditor, which ISO 9001, for those people who don't know, is all about quality management. It's all about process-driven improvements to your organization. And so looking at our ISO audits and seeing how processes weren't being followed or how they weren't working, I was like, well, actually, this makes sense. So we can start to use the system. So when I took it over, it was CRM 2011. We then went through the process of, I think at that company I did CRM 11, then 2013, and then 2015. I can't remember when it was in business process flows coming. I think it was 2013, 2015. And it started to see, well, actually, this makes sense. We've got processes. This is a process flow. Let's see how we can take this forward. And I just got more and more into it, and then eventually got recruited by another company in oil and gas to where I just purely focused on dynamics and dropped all of the other stuff that I was doing. And that's kind of led me through to the point where I'm at now, where this is my whole career now. It's all focused on the platform and how we do it. And it's to me, it's the greatest job. I like puzzles, and I just view my job as a bit of kind of solving puzzles every day. It's somebody says, I've got a problem. Here's the inputs I have. These are the
Mm-hmm.
outputs I'd like. How do we get that to work? And I go, oh well, I've got just the tools for it, and I can go and build something. And so it's been a bit of an odd journey, and I think you and I have talked about this before, but the kind of standard journey for most people on this platform probably does seem to
Mm.
be that they start at a partner as a kind of junior consultant, um, and they go through the process of learning there, and then they
Mm-hmm.
maybe stay there for a few years and they rise up the ranks and eventually maybe go, work for Microsoft or go out on their own and then
Yeah.
or maybe come to a client. I've kind of bypassed all of that and worked internally, which has been good for me. The difficulty is I'm relatively self-taught, and I'm so
Mm-hmm.
reliant on all the community contributions that I've had. So people, posting to forums and answering all the inane questions. And I'm sure if you look back at the Microsoft community forums, you'll find a lot of really stupid questions from me that lots
Mm-hmm.
of old MVPs and other kind of people in the community have answered for me. And so that's how I learned and got to where I am now.
I like it. A couple of things that came up in what you said there. One, you talked about business process flows and them making sense.
Hmm.
If I can just digress slightly, because one of my favorite things as Microsoft went through the development lifecycle back then was introduction of the business process flows, because finally I found it allowed people, no matter, if they, let's say, only carried out a business process once every few months and therefore
Hmm.
didn't have it all down to memory, it would guide them, right? They could follow the bouncing ball. What's your thoughts on business process flows? Because particularly there's changes coming to them, and then there were changes about 2 years ago, which I felt took the business process flow backwards, in that they collapsed the steps down.
Yep.
But tell me, just for a moment, to digress on, what are your thoughts about business process flow?
Yeah, so I love them, and it's for exactly that reason is that quite often in an organization a process is only carried out, once a quarter, every 6 months, once a
Mm-hmm.
year, once every 3 years, whatever it might be. And so having something that is a visual guide to any user, whether they've been in the organization for years or they're brand new to the organization, they can pick it up and they can see exactly what they need to do and they can see the
Mm-hmm.
steps and they can understand what the steps in that process look like. And so I'm a very visual guy. I do a lot of work with Microsoft Visio. So whenever I'm
Mm-hmm.
working with the teams internally, that's how I work with them. Is I say, well, let's talk through what we're trying to do here. Let's start with the
Mm-hmm.
process, and we'll sketch that out. And so to me, it's the logical next step. I've got the Visio flowchart. It shows me what all the steps in the process are.
Mm-hmm.
So the business process flow really for me is the kind of platform equivalent of that, where it just says, right, you've got a starting point here, do this thing. There's a stage gate here. What decision are you making? Well, that's where your branches come in. And if you say,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do part A, well, we'll go here. And if you do part B, well, then a new part of the branch opens up and does things. And so I love that. And I agree with you actually. Where it was before, where it was kind of very visual and you could see everything was great. And then when we've moved to the kind of more responsive design in the platform,
Mm-hmm.
I find it disengages people and they maybe
Yeah.
they almost don't engage with it because they can't see it and it's more clicks to get to it. There are benefits to it in terms of
Mm-hmm.
being able to dock it to the side of the window. I like that,
Mm-hmm.
and but
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, no, I think they're great and being able to span multiple entities or
Yeah.
tables. I thought was great as well. Obviously, the typical one would be your kind of lead to opportunity, but there's
Mm-hmm.
loads of opportunities to do that in a system. And it really makes sense and. I use them internally for lots of stuff. So one of the most recent ones, we do anti-money laundering checks on all of our
Yep.
clients every 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so as a client director who's responsible for doing that, you maybe only have one or two clients you're primarily responsible for. So at
Mm-hmm.
most you're doing this once a year. And so there's quite a lot of steps to go through because we have to be compliant. We're a financially regulated firm, so we need to make sure it's done correctly. And so the business process flow gives me the kind of satisfaction of knowing that that's done and I can audit against that, rather than hoping that your UX and your UI design is going to lead people down that garden path in the same way.
Yeah. I like it. I like it. So before we jump into your day in the life and how you're using Microsoft Biz Apps, tell me a bit about your company, just so the audience has context at a high level, what your organization does
Sure.
And then the second question that you can flow straight into that is around then how are you using Dynamics 365
Hmm.
and once again, only at a high level, how are you applying it in the context of your business?
Sure. You can shout at me if I talk too much, Mark.
No,
I realize
you're all
I
fine.
realize I'm a talker. So my company is called Hymans Robertson. We are a financial services firm, based in the UK. So we have offices in Glasgow and Edinburgh in Scotland and Birmingham and London down in England. We're 100 years old this year, actually. So the firm,
Mm.
we cover primarily kind of three markets as we term it. So personal wealth or individual wealth, financial services, and
Mhm.
pensions. And so we by and large, the history of the company is we're an actuarial services firm. So we provide support to pension schemes for actuarial services to make sure that they're investing in the right way and they're managing their pension schemes. We do third
Mhm.
party administration, we do life and financial services type stuff, offer investment advice, and we're kind of we're digressing our markets and moving out a little bit more. So we've just recently started a US subsidiary to do similar stuff over there. So looking at how that might work, and also looking at how we can tap into the kind of the B2C market, as well
Mhm.
as the B2B that we currently do. So cover a fairly wide range of services. We've just gone this year just over 1,000 employees. So
Mhm.
a fairly moderate sized firm, but a good firm. And so for me, where I fit in effectively is I work within our core IT department, within our business applications team. And so my responsibility then is to look at how we can make sure we're making best use of our subscription to the platform. We've got everybody in the firm licensed to use the Power Platform. The
Mhm.
firm is paying, as you can imagine, a handsome fee for that with Microsoft.
Yeah.
And so that we make sure is they're getting good ROI on that. And so that's where my role comes. I've been working here. Next week will be for four years I've been here.
Mhm.
Um, and so really part of my role is to go across the organization and look at where people are having these processes and try and break down these silos. We've done a whole business reorganization over the last kind of 18 months to 2 years. And it's
Mhm.
looking at how we stop these data silos, which happen in every company, and particularly when you've got older
Yeah.
companies that have been established for a while. And so it's then, well, how do we make sure that data is coming back to a central database rather than being in Excel spreadsheets or pseudo databases or
Mm.
Access or SQL or whatever it might be, bring it into a central repository and then make sure that that's accessible and manageable for the whole organization. So it's really about, I guess, my role is part evangelism, of just talking about what the platform is and selling it to
Mhm.
people. But the main part of my role is really building solutions on the platform to help the business and to make sure we're efficient, and then seeing how we can effectively save money to justify the licenses we're paying and justify the money they're
Yeah.
paying for my salary. So
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you manage competing priorities? I assume that there would be, from those various departments, as you're broken down the data silos, etc., there would be still departments or people within the business coming to you with, we need the system to do X or Y, or we need access to this data, or we need this report. How do you manage when you're doing it all in house? How do you manage those competing priorities, and how do you decide what gets your time?
so with all of the different departments, I guess like anybody, if you ask a team, when do you need this by? Everything's needs to be ASAP. How urgent is it? It's all urgent. Everything's urgent. So
Mm-mm-mm.
so the big thing for me really, and this is what I've been working on over the last few years, is trying to ask more probing questions to understand what it is people are doing. So we within the business applications team within Hyman's really it's looking at how we can get a handle on it, because we just get so many
Mm-hmm.
requests and my backlog is extensive. So a lot of what I look at to establish priority is what value is this going to provide for the business.
Mm-hmm.
And by that I mean, how many people are we talking about are going to be affected? Is it you and the three people in your direct team? Is it
Mm-hmm.
250 people all within one of our practices? Is it firm wide? Because that matters in terms of audience. Also, what's the size of the project? Because what we want to deliver are, if we can, quick wins that deliver high value.
Mm-mm.
Because that helps us too. And also, what opportunities are there for automation? If we're taking something that you're just recording in Excel and we're just moving that to a table in Dataverse, well, that's where I want it to be. But like, if it's going to take me a while to create a new table and
Mm.
the end effect is just that you've moved it from one place to another, well, I'm not sure that it's necessarily gonna be worth the time that it takes. So that gets deprioritized slightly.
Mm.
Still important to get it done, but it's, we have to look at the stuff that's actually going to deliver value to the business, and where does it tie into the other parts of the data that we have in the organization. So
Mm.
lots of questions that we do. Internally, we also have a change management team, and so we utilize them to make sure that they're gathering business requirements for us,
Mm.
and getting that through. And so really trying to standardize how we're getting these requests coming in, because what I try to avoid, and what I really don't want, is people IMing me questions all the
Yeah.
time, or dropping me a call
Yeah.
on Teams, or emailing me,
Mm-hmm.
because one, I don't have the time in the day to answer all these questions, and two, it doesn't help because it distracts from you. This, um, as I'm sure you're familiar, context switching just kills your day. Having
Yeah.
constant interruptions just it goes nowhere. And when there's only one of me at the moment, although hopefully that'll be changing soon, it really is important that I can focus on the stuff that we do. Alongside all of that, we log everything in ADO, and then we do regular kind of prioritization reviews to make sure everything's working. And so we actually had one just this morning to look at what are the objectives for the next, for the next month. What parts of the backlog are we going to take through?
Mm-hmm.
Is something that's in there still actually required, or not? So I work with my boss and with our head of IT to make sure that's done, and across the business applications team to make sure
Mm-hmm.
it's been done. Because the other thing we find with being internal is, if somebody doesn't get an answer immediately from me, they'll maybe go and say, well, actually, maybe we could go and buy a piece of software that might do it. Or I'll go and ask another
Yeah.
member of the team if they could go and build something in SQL, or if they could go and build it in SharePoint, or whatever it might be. So we try, as
Mm-hmm.
a core IT department, we try and keep that communication up across the board to make sure we all know what's happening. So I think there's still a way to go on that.
Yeah.
To try and work out what the best approach is, and we've been trying lots of different things, and I'm not sure we have the answer 100% yet, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the short answer is, how do you manage competing priorities with difficulty?
Yeah.
But it's down to gut feel sometimes, and also, the kind of the cliche that the squeaky wheel gets the grease is there for a
Mm-hmm.
reason. But it's true. If somebody is
Mm-hmm.
constantly badgering me for something, it generally is a sign that actually it's really important to them,
Yeah.
and will deliver value. So that, I I hesitate to say that, because I don't want somebody in my organization to listen to this and think, what I need to do is just constantly contact Ryan.
Yeah.
So I'm making a rod for my back there, but like, we're trying
Yeah.
to make sure that we are not letting the business down. Ultimately, I'm in a business support unit in the organization. I'm here to serve the business needs, and so
Mm-hmm.
um, it's just trying to get a balance of what's going to deliver value. And you spoke to Andrew Welsh before quite a few times, I'm
Yeah.
sure, and he's got a great
Yeah.
diagram on his website of kind of, this kind of almost like a reverse risk matrix about, what's the business value, what's the effort involved, and how do we look
Mm-hmm.
at that prioritization. And it's a bit similar to that, just slightly more kind of complex.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So, in what you're saying there, are you considering the Power Platform as you talked about people coming in building SQL databases, or building an app, or going out outsourcing, grabbing an app from somewhere else.
Hmm.
And I'm seeing a lot of organizations. I recently had Alan from Slumberjay, who within his organization, and
Hmm.
once again, end customer, I don't know, 80, 90,000 employees. But in their scenario, they've built over 20,000 apps, over 30,000 flows, with Power Automate now running within the organization. And so they've really adopted the Power Platform as a company-wide business application tool to build any kind of line of business app.
Hmm.
Are you moving to that kind of thinking? And of course, you would need additional people, I suppose, to help you in that scenario. But is that kind of on your radar, or are you already well down that path?
Yeah, so it's on the radar. We're actually in the process of, I guess two things. One, we just put an advert live today for somebody to join my team as a Power Platform specialist. So
Hmm.
hopefully by the time this is published, we'll have somebody in that role. And we're
Nice.
also engaging with partners. So we've had a couple of partners in to have a chat about getting support to deploy the Center of Excellence. So the Microsoft Center of Excellence, but also just looking at their experience and their best practice for putting that out. So looking at
Nice.
how we can effectively upskill their team, because obviously Microsoft sell the vision of the kind of democratization of data and the
Hmm.
democratization of the app building. And while I do believe that the fluffiness, the reality is, if you don't give people something like this, then they're just going to build it in Excel, as a very
Yeah.
basic tool. That's what I used to
Shadow
do.
IT, right?
It's, yeah,
Mm.
like, it's what I used to do. It's what I still do. Is occasionally I'll just build something in Excel because I can do it quick and easy, and I understand
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
application easily. Likewise, we've got teams across the business who have great development experience. So they'll spend ages building stuff, in SQL, or they'll build kind of apps with Python, or they'll spend time with RStudio to do stuff, or whatever it
Yeah.
might be. Um, and all of this stuff is great. The problem is we don't get visibility of the data. And so the kind of the control freak side of me is terrified of giving people access to the platform, because like, of course there's fear of sprawl and whatever else, but that's why we're wanting
Yeah.
to engage a
Yeah.
partner, is to get the governance correct and to make sure we can get
Correct.
there.
Yeah.
And because the reality is, this is how I got into working on this platform, was building my own line of business applications effectively. I was saying, well, what would make my workflow better? It's just that my workflow, because I worked in small organizations initially, was kind of part of the overall business. But the reality is, even if I had a team of 10 behind me, in our core business applications team, we have 1,000 employees in the organization who do vastly different things, and they're going to understand what they do so much better than
Yeah.
I do. And so it's much easier for me, as a kind of central point, to be there as an expert resource and to say, well, I can see what you've done here. You might not be aware, but actually another part of the business is doing something else, something similar, and I think I can see parallels here, or the data you're
Yeah.
generating could
Yeah.
integrate here. And so I think being that at the center of that, and actually supporting the teams, is so much more important, and it stops me being a bottleneck, because that's, we just talked about competing priorities, but the reason
Yeah.
we have
Yeah.
competing priorities is because I'm a bottleneck. If all development funnels through me, and my team, well, then inevitably you're going to be a bottleneck. As much as it'd be nice that we would have a nice kind of simple schedule and it would be one to the next to the next. The reality is that's not how business works. That, like, different teams will need things all at the same time, and so that's why we are looking at engaging with a partner, one, for that support for deploying center of excellence, but two, also as
Yep.
that kind of relief valve, where we can say, we have
Yeah.
a nicely packaged up project requirement, can you
Totally.
go and do this? So yeah,
Yeah.
but I think it's going to be so important to make sure that we do upskill the teams internally, and take those kind of subject matter experts and those champions that we have, and give them the skills and experience to start doing that. And we started piloting that, so we've been testing that with a few teams, of saying, here's the platform, I'll run you through kind of app in a day or whatever, to show you how you can do stuff, and we can take these simple applications and you can build them and you can deploy them amongst your team. And it's great to get people up on that. People get so excited about it. I get excited about it still, and that's, like I said, that's what led me to this career, was getting excited about the things I could build. And while I don't expect people to change their career, I know they're building this stuff, so let's give you the tools that we can do
Yeah.
to make this easier for us.
I like it. How do you fund your projects? And, not only the licensing contracts with Microsoft, but actually, and it leads back into the competing priorities and things. How do you, as an internal business, choose, and don't share any secret source, of course, but how do you, how do you decide on, okay, you just talked about outsourcing to a partner, and there would be a quote, etc., and a cost expectation around that. How do you balance that with, and you touched on it before, like a return on investment? Because, someone might say, I want an app to do this. And if the app takes 10,000 hours to build and it only saves the business 50 minutes a month, the cost to benefit is not there. And so back to, funding projects, licensing, etc. How do you make those decisions, or how do you get the right people to make those decisions in your favor?
So I guess it's not too dissimilar to what you do as a partner, right? You provide it. If somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, Mark, I need a piece of work," you're going to say, "Well, I think it'll take, based on my experience and my skills, I think it'll take X amount of working days of effort to do this." I'm much the same. That's what I do. Is I say, this will take me X amount of time. I have 35 hours in a week to work on this. So if it's going to take me 4 working days to get something done, well, what does that cost look like? Because ultimately, as a business support unit, we support all of the kind of the profit centers in the business, but part of being a profit center is also managing your budget and looking after your P&L, and BSU, business support units are come as part of that. So the cost is allocated that way. So we aren't quite as bad as partners. We're not, I'm not necessarily having full chargeable and utilization rates, because it's kind of different, but it is looking at, saying, how many effort days roughly does it take to do something? And so we can then balance that off. And like you say, if I look at something and say, well, yeah, we could do that, but it's going to take me 20 working days, let's have a look at what the cost savings will be. And so, if we do something that takes 20 working days, but it saves 300 people half an hour every day, well, that's a no-brainer for us. We can say, well, actually, yeah, yes, that's worth it. If it saves 20 people 5 minutes every 2 weeks, probably not as much. And so
Yeah.
that all forms part of the conversation of the requirements gathering. And that's something since I joined here, and I keep banging this drum is saying, well, how do we get a sense of what the value of the work that we do is? Because it's really hard internally as a business support unit sometimes to get people to understand the value of what we do. So that's one of the things is saying, well, let's baseline where you're at just now, and then when we finish the project and we signed it off and you're happy with it, let's have a look at how things look. So how much time does this process, whatever that process was, take you now compared to before? So a good example of that was, I think about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I developed a solution for managing document approval. So when we create advice for our clients, for example, it has to go through a number of approval steps to make sure it's been signed off for us. And senior people have seen it and they've said, yeah, it's fine, because it goes on record and it's, again, financially regulated firm. The previous solution had been built in SharePoint with SharePoint workflows, and then we changed the solution, built it in the Power Platform, and so that saved on average 15 minutes per record. And I think since we launched it, we've had somewhere in the region of 12,000 records created.
Wow.
And so you can,
that's good quantifiable data, right?
yeah, and obviously that's easy for that one because it gives us quantifiable. It's not always as simple as that, but it's important for us to be able to say that we can do this, and here's what it's going to look like for us. And similarly, when we did the migration from on-prem to online, previously everything was done in .NET. It was developed by an external supplier. It cost us an absolute fortune. We built it all in the Power Platform with Azure Functions in the back end. And so again, it works much quicker. It's much smoother. We're not spending millions of pounds with an external support partner. It's all internally, so we can quantify that and push that back to the business. And that's part of what then justifies us investing so much in our licensing.
Yeah, I like it. How do you handle things like storage logs, general BAU, and making sure everything is ticking along error free and nothing's going to bite you in the bum at any point?
So I guess it's a mix of kind of regular review and proactive monitoring, and also just reactive support. So with looking at error logs, for example, one of the things we've used is John Liu's Flow Studio, which shows me kind of error runs in any flows I've created. Obviously, everything I create never fails, but other people do. So so yeah, one of the things that is monitoring that, and also just looking at the Power Platform admin center to look at like our storage logs, particularly with things like Click Dimensions. If you've used it, great tool, but generates a lot of data. And so looking at how we manage that and where that data is going to. So we're still relatively kind of new into online. So I think I said in the previous show, we migrated from on-prem to online at the end of March. So we're only 4 months online. So still getting the grips with it. Fortunately, we've got quite a lot of capacity to play with, so it's not necessarily urgent at the moment to stay on top of it, but we're certainly getting the tools in place to make sure we are doing that. And also, we have our support help desk internally. So if there are any bugs in the system, where something's not working the way people think it should, then we react to that as and when it comes in, based on the prioritization of those support tickets. So, like I say, a mix of that proactive monitoring, and then reactively jumping in where something's not quite working. But yeah, it's part of the difficulty is being effectively right now a one-man band. They're always striking that balance between creating new solutions for the organization which are going to deliver value versus doing support tickets versus doing R&D for other things that might come through, and also just the general kind of day-to-day stuff with communicating with teams internally and doing the kind of socialization type stuff that is also important in a workplace.
Yeah. So how, you've obviously, as you say, you're one-man team, but there's the potential to, what we've seen in other businesses like yours, is that there are people that are at the coalface doing their job, that they might have some magic Excel skills. They're an Excel expert. They and they're potentially part of, let's say they're not in a reporting line to you, but they're potentially part of your build team or maker team that you would have. What's your plans? Because I understand you're starting to grow this area, to start educating those people around the Power Platform and app making, and then even how do you find those expert gurus, with Excel that you potentially inside your organization can transition into, app makers?
Yeah, so part of that just comes down to experience. You know, like I said, I've been here for 4 years, so
Mm.
but with that comes just knowing people and knowing who
Hmm.
who the kind of go-to people are. Because one of the good things in my organization is that we don't have fixed desks in the office. It's all hot desking, and we
Hmm.
do a lot. Obviously we're not in the office just now with COVID, but when we were in the
Yeah,
office,
yeah.
we'd regularly encourage people to go and sit at a new desk on a every kind of second Monday or whatever. You'd say, well, just go and pick a different
Hmm.
desk to sit at, or find somebody else to talk to, so you're not just sitting in the same place all the time, and you're not getting exposed to that, and also just focusing on that. And also with the projects we're doing, like I said, we do have a change management team internally who are great. And so they're
Hmm.
able to identify those people, and where people have been developing these Excel tools over time. Some of those have then become organization-wide templates for various bits and pieces. For example, costing models would have
Hmm.
started as somebody's kind of pet project where they created an Excel spreadsheet, and it's now become a kind of organization standard. And so in much the same way, that's what we're looking to do, is saying, well, you can build a little app, and then if it's really good and it could have benefits out with you and your team, well, we're going to take that to enterprise level and make it central and make it easily deployable. So it's part
Hmm.
of that experience, and also just looking at who's interested, because
Yeah.
because that matters too. What we don't want to do is foist it on people and say, hey, you're now a maker, get on with it.
Mm-mm.
You want people who are actually interested in the platform, and it's a double-edged sword. But Microsoft's marketing is so good that people can't help but be aware of it. And so
Mm.
I've been, quite, and when since I joined here, is talking about the platform by name. And I think there was a slight reluctance before for people. We had different kind of product names internally for what things were, so we never really referred
Hmm.
to Dynamics CRM. It was always built as part of this kind of, oh, it's part of our client
Yeah.
information management platform. And I'm like, well, that's cool, but like
Yeah.
people actually need to know the product they're using, because that
Hmm.
matters.
Interesting.
And so now that people obviously are you can't help but be aware of Power Apps as a thing. If you're in any way
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
engaged with anything online, you'll have seen it somewhere. And so when we migrated, we made a big play about the fact we were moving online, we were moving to the Power Platform, we were unlocking the capabilities of Power Apps and Power Automate. And so, like I said, one of the things we're doing is running, app in a day kind of courses internally to make sure people can
Hmm.
see just how easy it is, and encouraging people to do the training. One of the things I love about this organization is that, they're very happy to invest in people doing training and doing certifications if that's the thing they want to do, or
Hmm.
whatever. And I think that's so important, to get your people, not just in our core IT departments, but in the wider group. And we're a very tech driven firm anyway. We develop lots of applications for business, so we have hundreds of people internally who do tech type stuff, and obviously our actuaries, a lot of them come from software development backgrounds as well. So
Hmm. Hmm.
again, these are people who are very very skilled and experienced, and so all we're saying to them is like, let's take those skills and see how we can transfer them into this platform, and get you upskilled. And so, like I said, we've run a few pilots on that to get people hands on with it,
Hmm.
and just saying, look,
Hmm.
and for me, what I try and do is just talk them through how I build something and why I build it a certain way. So when they're saying, I don't know, we had like our change management team, like I said, they're like, well, we want people to put their projects in, and assess them against our change management framework, and then based
Mm-mm.
on their answers, give them some advice and also log it here. Which, uh, I don't need to tell you, that's relatively simple, right?
Yeah.
You could probably knock that up in half a day, easily. Maybe even less time, because you're much better than I am, Mark. But you could do this application quickly. So yes, I could do that, but it's that what's the old saying? It's like, give a man a fish, you'll feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, you'll feed him for life, whatever. It's the same idea, right?
Totally. Totally.
I could
Yeah.
build it and I can deploy it really quickly, and that'll get them done. But that just solves the immediate
It's,
requirement.
it's
It
not
doesn't.
scalable.
It's not scalable. And
Mm.
so what we want to do is say, well,
Mm.
let's sit down and go through it. Or if I build it, then we go through and we say, well, here's the steps in the process. Here's what this thing does. Here's why, the formula says this, or here's why the flow looks like this, and
Mm-mm.
does this. Here's some samples that you can run through, and here's a copy. Take that into your development environment and just unpick it, and then give me any questions you've got. So it's just about kind of slowly building that experience base so people can get upskilled in that.
Yeah. I like it. What tools do you use to support what you do? And you mentioned Visio as one of
Yeah.
your key tools. So I'm not. So yeah. Be broad in this, but kind of what are the different things you do that supports you in your day to day role?
Yeah, sure. So Visio is probably prime amongst them, just because it really helps
Hmm.
me to document out something. I think, having a visual flow makes a huge difference. Also use Azure DevOps. Although we're
Mm-hmm.
relatively immature in our adoption of DevOps, again, having come
Mm-hmm.
from on-prem to online, we're looking at how we can do that. And also being a one-man development team,
Yeah.
it is a bit overkill, but we're wanting to
Mm-hmm.
scale for
Mm-hmm.
growth. So again, looking at adopting that kind of properly and having a proper development pipeline. Um,
I like it.
I use Teams a lot and use planner boards within Teams, or
Mm-hmm.
depending on other teams, we use things like Trello boards or Kanbanese, but ideally using the Microsoft
Mm-hmm.
platform because that's what we're licensed for. Um, and also, in terms of the tools that I use kind of on a daily basis, I can't help but use their XM Toolbox. I
Yeah.
can't imagine anybody doing this job not using it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think with the caveat that I'm not sure I'd necessarily teach my users about the external toolbox or about the various kind of
Mm-hmm.
the various Chrome plugins that you can get that might cause
Yeah. Yeah.
consternation. And I also use North 52, which is a business process
Yep.
automation tool. One of my
Mm-hmm.
favorite tools. I've been using it for years and it's amazing. And so just a mix of kind of different tools, and obviously using the Microsoft tools that are part of the Power Platform, but yeah, just thinking about
Mm-hmm.
those wider tools that form part of my kind of regular
I
toolkit. That's
like
the
it.
stuff that I kind of tap into. And like I said, John Lewis Flow Studio
Yeah.
is really useful just from a monitoring perspective.
Yeah, I like it. What's your relationship like with Microsoft? As in, do you have one? And I'm not talking about you as an MVP, but I'm talking about from within the context of you as a company.
So as a company, we've got a pretty good relationship with Microsoft. I think I guess it's hard to know how good it is. Microsoft
Mm-hmm.
have sales teams, so they'll tell you
Mm-hmm.
you're a priority customer. But generally,
Mm-hmm.
it's generally pretty positive. They've been really supportive. As we were moving from on-prem to online, they helped us engage with Fast Track team. They helped to engage us,
Mm-hmm.
with the licensing teams to get our licensing model correctly. They've put us in touch with several different partners to give us advice on who they think would support us as we move our journey forward. Um,
Nice.
and we have various kind of avenues into support where we need it. So I'm not the relationship manager with Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
It's somebody else within the core IT department, but
Mm-hmm.
there's plenty of kind of key contacts that we can pick up the phone to, and they'll answer pretty quickly, which is great. So um, it's been really positive. Like I said, as we did this migration project, Microsoft were excellent, and we wouldn't have been able to do it without the fast track team because it would have cost a lot more and taken a lot more time versus what we did with them. So um,
Yeah.
yeah, and going forward, I think one of the big changes we made was when I joined the organization, we had about 40% of the staff licensed to use Dynamics, and that was kind of increasing. And then
Mm-hmm.
when we
Mm-hmm.
made the move online, we licensed everybody in the firm for the Power Platform.
Nice. Nice. Smart move.
Yeah.
What's your experience as a customer working with Microsoft partners? And is there anything you would like to see partners improve on when engaging with a customer like you?
Yeah, so working with partners has been, I think it's a bit challenging sometimes, and maybe it's just because of who I am. I'm a challenging guy,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
I'm very clear on what I know, and I think the difficulty is some of the partners we've engaged with have a kind of you know they take the same approach regardless who the client is. They don't acknowledge
Mm-hmm.
who the client is or what the skill and experience. So there's like it doesn't matter what you say, we're just gonna run through our workflow, and it's like sometimes when you phone like a helpline and you get put through to a guy who's
Mm-hmm.
just reading off a script and he will not deviate from
Yeah.
that script ever. That's how
Yeah.
I felt my relationship's been with some partners. And I'm not going to name names, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just how
No,
it's
no.
been. And the difficulty is, I work in this organization. I work very closely with our teams. I have a level of skill and experience with the platform, and so
Mm-hmm.
where that gets difficult is where you then start butting heads, and they feel like maybe I'm undermining them. Whereas I feel like I'm not being led down the path. I've got clear
Yeah.
requirements. This is what I want you to develop. I'm not looking for you to come in and take over the platform and say we're going to do this and we're going to run it this
Mm-hmm.
way because that's how we do things. So that's where
Yeah.
the difficulty lies is finding the right balance.
Mm-hmm.
Partners have that, and there's some great partners out there, and I've worked with some great partners as well. Just to be clear, it's
Mm-hmm.
trying to find the right ones who really will understand what we're trying to achieve as an organization, what the role that I play in the organization is, and my team, what we do, and how that works.
Yeah.
So I think when we talk to partners, sometimes they come in and they're like, well, what we're going to do is we're going to develop the relationships with your senior executives. Like, well, we can do that. right, well, we'll do your business analysis. Like, we've already done that. We've got a change team
Mm-hmm.
who've done the requirements gathering. Right, so what we'll do is we'll completely reorganize your pipeline. It's like, well, I don't need you to do that. I've given you the requirements. Can you just go and build it
Yeah.
and then bring it back to me? And then we'll go through the testing. And I think that's the challenge is trying to say, where for me and in my role, and it's very specific to me, I'm really looking for
Mm-hmm.
expert support, to say,
Yeah.
here's a set of requirements I've got. Here's my thoughts on it. Where am I going wrong? What am I missing?
Yeah.
And how do we get that better? But again, not every organization has a team like mine internally, so I think it's probably different for them. Some organizations
Mm-hmm.
just want a partner to run the show. Maybe it's just I'm a control freak. I don't want that. I just want them to come in and effectively be part of my team. And I think that where it's difficult is sometimes a partner will freeze you out because they're like, working with him is quite tough. So we'll just freeze him out and we'll just not
It's
include him in the communications we're having or whatever it is.
yeah. It's interesting. I'm going to shortly do a podcast in the future with Joel Lindstrom, and he's in the US, runs a large Hitachi practice around the Power Platform, and we were talking about the future of engaging with partners and the skill of consultants. And part of the problem is that over the last 3 years, the Power Platform has done quite a pivot away from Dynamics. And you have a lot of consultants that are very strong in Dynamics, but they've never taken the time to learn Power Apps, particularly for, Canvas. And they think that it's going to be a real easy process to pick up and learn these tools. And he was like, now I'm having this trouble is that if you hire folks like this, is that they will go out to a customer and the customer knows more about Power Apps than what the partner is meant to know. And therefore it's embarrassing type thing, right? When you're if you're having staff that feel that have come from the traditional Dynamics world that, we can pick it up. The interface doesn't change that much, He highlighted that I've written blogs that said Dynamics CRM sales hasn't changed in 20 years. Not fundamentally. It's still the same architecture as when I first got into the job is still there. Yet the world has massively changed in sales. And so I think it's interesting that partners are going to need to get way more savvy and way more flexible in their engagement models because they're, to a degree, they're not necessarily holding that position of having the absolute gurus on their teams and that are well ahead of the customer. The customer these days, like yourself, you're an MVP inside a company. You know a little bit, right? That's why you're an MVP. That's why you're there. And they can't put, folks to work with you that are kind of like, no, we need to follow our process. When more and more, I think the line between a customer and partner are going to become way more blurred. It's not going to be that scenario where a company is coming to you as a partner and going, hey, here's a nice little square box I want built, and we can, here's the inputs and here's the outputs. It's going to be a lot more of, hybrid teams, just like we have hybrid cloud. I think it's going to be hybrid teams and working together engagement, and there needs to be that evolution within the partner ecosystem.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the conversations we've been having with partners recently is about saying, well, we want you to work with us on this. We're not just going to say, here's a bundle of money, go and do something with it, and then charge us again at the end of the quarter. It's really about saying, how do we work together to make sure, because as great as my job is, and as as delighted as I am with how my career trajectory's gone, the downside is I haven't worked inside a partner, and so I know what I know. Yes, I'm an MVP and whatever else, but the problem is I don't know what I don't know. It's that those unknown unknowns, and so the difficulty then is that you become myopic and you get stuck into this. Well, this is how I do things, and I miss something, and and it's I remember seeing discussions with Joel about Canvas apps, and it's exactly that. You remember when Canvas apps first got launched, I thought, oh yeah, I could pick that up, and then you realize actually Power FX, as now called, it's a completely different beast. And so it takes time to learn that. And if you look, and actually I think people who have come from the SharePoint world tend to be much better at Canvas apps than people who come from the Dynamics world. And I think because they're less kind of invested in how we do things with our model driven apps. And I find it difficult myself to go, I'll just build a Canvas app. Because the model driven apps are my comfort zone.
There.
And so it's trying to get that balance right of getting people in, and that's precisely why we've gone out to advert for additional support in the team, is to bring somebody with a different mindset to help make sure that we're not missing something, and that's why we're engaging with these partners. And I think it is going to change. I think more and more organizations are going to be like, well, we're building the platform, we have the licenses. People want to build this stuff, so when they built it and then a partner comes in and goes, oh, well, now we don't like how you've done that, so we're just going to completely redo it. They're like, we've invested the time and effort into this, and people will know what, to a certain degree, they'll understand what the platform can do, so you can't get away with it. And I think that was the big difference. When I joined this organization, we had a previous partner, and they were just doing their own thing and just ignoring everything the organization wanted to do, and really not following best practice for how we do things in the Dynamics world as it was then. And so when I came in, then it was, we were just butting heads all the time. So I was like, that's not how we do things. It's not how it should be. And they were like, it doesn't really matter. And then again, they were cutting me out. And that's why, that's why that partner's no longer with us. So it's about saying, well, like, find the right partner and find that balance of saying, well, here's what you're missing. Here's how we can do things. Here's how we can support you. And I think it'll help. And it's interesting, you mentioned about dynamic sales, and it's precisely how I felt. We license everybody in an organization for Power Apps per user, precisely because actually dynamic sales is doing nothing for us. We don't use leads in the organization because our leads are generally our existing customer base, because we have a known customer base. We only really use opportunities as a holding kind of record. We don't use quotes. We don't use orders or invoices because we have an ERP system that manages that. We don't use the product catalogs. It doesn't fit how our product catalog operates.
No.
And so if you look across dynamic sales, which costs a lot of money, well, we're not really what we're paying for. Like, and I think that's the difficulty. And so, I think 99% of the stuff we do is custom. It's all custom tables, custom entities, whatever terminology we're using this week. And so that's where it comes to now. And I think that's going to become more the norm. And even more so, I think the latest announcement that you can engage with opportunities or Dynamics 365 records from within Teams and edit them without a license. Well, that's a ground shift.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting how that plays out. Ryan, we're on time. Tell me, is there a guest you recommend for a future show?
Yeah, well, I think, I don't know if you had Tricia Sinclair on recently, but she's just done the Power Platform School to kind of help upskill people and get them jobs in the industry, which is great. And she's really keen on diversity, getting more diversity into the platform, which I think is excellent. She's doing some amazing stuff. So if you've not had her on, I would love to hear from her.
I love it. Here's your quick fire questions. Cool. If you could only drink one alcohol for the rest of your life, what would it choose?
Beer, IPAs.
Wow, yeah, nice. A lot of variety, right?
Yeah.
Would you rather watch a movie at home or at a theatre?
Probably at home.
Nice. What season fits your personality the best?
Oh, good question. Probably autumn. I think it's not too hot, not too cold, nice light in the sky. It's good weather.
I love it. Ryan, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Mark. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Application MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as NZ365 Guy. If there's a guest you'd like to see on the show, please message me on LinkedIn. Let me know who it is and why. If you'd like to contribute to the show, be a supporter, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/NZ365 Guy. Otherwise, stay safe out there and see you next time.